Well, good day. My name is Mark Belanger. I'm a Director of Children's Education Management, and this briefing is for military families in Europe regarding children's education management, our portfolio, and benefits that are involved. So this is the Children's Education Management Organization. We fall under Director of Military Family Services, Colonel Harris. Then you have myself, the Director of Children's Education Management. Over to the right, I have a Senior Education Officer. That's Heather Mace. She's my advisor. I also have the Director of the AF North International School, who reports to me while I am the Chairman of the Board of Governors of the AF North International School. Below that, we have our office in Europe on the base in Niederheid. So we have Mr. David Proctor and his staff, Simone Valdez and Kelly Nicholson, who has just left us and is being replaced as I speak. In our office here in Ottawa, we have Jeanette Gallard, who oversees the finance for our overseas schools and the overall SEM budget. And working with her is Teresa Martin. Then we have Ghislain Taillon, who's our Senior Policy Analyst. Then we have our Senior Guidance Counselor, who's currently Andrea Smith. Working with her is our other Guidance Counselor, Carole Coulombe, and their admin support position is currently vacant. And then we have our principal of our SHAPE International School at Casteau, Belgium, Kathy Kay, and her teachers. And then we have the principal of the AF North Middle School and High School, Mr. Eric Remish, and his 10 teachers. And finally, we have the vice principal of the AF North British Canadian Elementary Section, and that's France Meunier, and her 5 teachers. So that's basically the SEM organization. As I said, we fall on Military Family Services, who falls under the Director General Morale and Welfare Services, who falls under the Chief Military Personnel Command. So children's education management, our mandate is to manage the education and compensation and benefits programs for the Canadian Armed Forces members and their families. So that entails foreign service education allowances, family reunion travel, education travel, post-secondary shelter allowance. We also manage Canadian Forces overseas schools, as I just alluded to on the org chart. So that involves the operational planning, delivery, and administration of the schools at AF North International School in Brunsum, the Netherlands, and SHAPE International School at Casteau, Belgium. Both schools follow the Ontario curriculum. So who do we support? Well, currently we have 200 students at our schools at both AF North and SHAPE. We have 700 students being supported at over 250 locations outside of Canada. So those are families that are serving outside of Canada around the world. We have 170 students attending post-secondary education here in Canada while the families are serving outside of Canada. We have 50 students at the elementary and secondary level that we're supporting inside of Canada. And we have currently 800 students that have received the guidance counseling services. This is significant as we had only launched the guidance counseling service since 1 Jan 2015, and we're already at 800 students. So that service is proving to be a very valuable one. And I'll talk about that further as we move forward. So our overseas schools, the SHAPE International School is a military-controlled international school. It has 17 individual schools for each nation within it. The Canadian Elementary School is located adjacent to the building with the Greek and Polish sections. It's a dual language enriched program. At the high school level, the students must go to the U.S. Department of Defense School for English or the Belgian School for French. Therefore, our school goes from grade 1 to grade 8. AF North International School is owned by 4 nations, Canada, Germany, United Kingdom, and United States. Our elementary students are in the new British Canadian section and follow the English Natural Curriculum. So that's JK to grade 5. And then the middle and secondary students follow the Ontario curriculum in the Canadian middle school, high school, so from grade 6 to grade 12. So just to give you an idea of what is required for graduation in Ontario, this is what is required to get an Ontario secondary school diploma. So as you can see, there's 18 compulsory credits and 12 optional credits. So that's a total of 30, plus 40 hours of community service and a provincial literacy test. So just so you know, because the reason why we're following the Ontario curriculum at both our overseas schools, it's the only province in Canada that approves private status for private schools. So both our schools are considered private. The Half North International School High School is inspected annually by the Ministry of Education of Ontario. So we are a licensed, inspected school. So that shows you that there's quite a difference in curriculum, and as I go forward, you'll see that there are clearly differences, and that's why we launched our guidance counseling service to support families, especially on their return to Canada, to have their children integrate seamlessly into the Canadian system. This is an interesting slide. This is high school graduation requirements across Canada, and so we're talking about outside Canada, that there are curriculum differences and equivalency differences between the Ontario curriculum and the US or the UK. Here we have, within Canada, not one province is the same, except for the green that you see. Northwest Territories and Nunavut adopted the Alberta curriculum. That's why those three provinces and territories are green. Same with BC and Yukon, but all the rest are different. So even in Canada, navigating from one province to the next, different curricula is a challenge for families. And again, this is a testament to our guidance counseling service to help families navigate the different curricula. Here's another interesting slide. This just gives you an idea of the difference between the Ontario and US comparison for high school. So as I said, in Ontario, you need 30 credits. Whereas in the US, it depends on the state. It runs anywhere from 22 to 26 credits. So in Ontario, it's 50% to pass, 60 in the US. The marking is different. Final mark is 70% of the year's work, 30% on the year-end summative, whereas in the US, final mark is flexible breakdown of the year's mark. So at the end, you get an Ontario report card or a US report card. So the interesting thing, or the thing to remember here, if a child is going to be graduating in a US curriculum school while they are serving OUTCAN, that is fine. Canadian universities will accept the US high school diploma, and they will be able to attend post-secondary school. The problem lies when they return midstream before graduation, and that's where we have problems with credits, counts, and equivalencies. So, post-ceiling. As I alluded to before, we have to have schools at every location where Canadian Armed Forces families are serving around the world. So currently, a post-ceiling is exactly that. It's education and related information with schooling for over 500 locations around the world. So it's a great research tool for families. It lists the schoolings. So, of course, if the schools are in English, in the US or UK, children are expected to attend local state schools, or in the French language in France or Belgium. If not, then we have the fee-paying schools. The private schools would be listed. French schools, if they're available. Roman Catholic schools, if they're available, especially in the US. And information on education allowances and benefits. So that's a critical tool. They're on our website. They're listed by continent pretty much, so you click on Europe and then the countries will show, and then the cities, you drill down and find your city, like Rome, and then the post ceilings will come up for your exact post. So here's an example of what a post ceiling looks like. As I said, they're on our website. This is the post ceiling for Naples, Italy. So it starts off with the name of the representative school. That means that's the school that you're expected to attend. So in this case, it's the Department of Defense American School. And it gives you the website of the school, so the elementary school or the high school. It gives you information on what grades, so JK, senior kindergarten, grades 1 to 6, 7 to 8, 9 to 12. So it shows you all the stuff that's required and what's available. So it's a great tool for families, and it gives you the link to the school's website. So when we're talking on benefits, there's a big difference between military foreign service instructions, which apply to Canadian Armed Force members. So that's all your benefits while you're serving OutCan, your red share, your foreign service allowances, all your benefits while you're serving outside of Canada. So that's used for everything except for dependent education, and those instructions apply to Canadian Armed Force members only, and no other government employee. And they're administered by the Director General Compensation and Benefits, so it's within the Canadian Armed Forces that it's administered by and adjudicated by within the Canadian Armed Forces. And then you have CBI 12, which is down at the bottom here. Those are education allowances for Canadian Armed Forces members within Canada, so when you're posted from one province to the next. They are basically the same as the MFSI. They apply solely to Canadian Armed Forces members and are adjudicated by my office within the Department of National Defence, within the Canadian Forces. Whereas Foreign Service directives are Government of Canada National Joint Council directives, and they're used by all departments specifically for children's education. So that's the difference. So when we're talking about education allowances, they're not solely for Canadian Armed Force members. They're for all of Government of Canada employees, and the adjudication process for that is quite different. It's outside of the department. So Foreign Service directives, as I said before, for education allowances, for OutCan, they are administered by two interdepartmental working groups. So you have Working Group A, which sits on a quarterly basis, and they look at policy. They're the ones that have the lead on actually changing policy and approaching the Treasury Board to make changes to the policy. Then you have Working Group B. Working Group B is an interpretation of policy. They approve annual rates. They make decisions on specific cases, and they meet monthly. So on education allowances specifically, the way that FSD 34, which is the applicable Foreign Service Directive, reads, throughout it basically reads, you know, when it's talking about tutoring or specific tuition requests, it says on the recommendation of an interdepartmental working group, blah, 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 that means that to get that specific benefit, a request has to go to Working Group B, and they must authorize it. So Working Group B is a panel made up of basically 9 representatives from each department that has employees serving outside of Canada. So you have D&D, which my office represents for Canadian Armed Force members, and then there's another D&D representative that looks after civilian employees that are serving, civilian D&D employees that are serving outside Canada, and you have the RCMP, Border Services, Canadian Security Intelligence, CSIS, so basically all departments that have employees outside of Canada, so there's roughly 9. So all the cases from each department are filtered up through Working Group B on a monthly basis, and that's where specific decisions are made on specific cases or requests. So it's a different process, it's timely, or not timely, it's time consuming, whereas when a member or a family makes a request, it has to go through the order room clerk, the education allowance clerk. All the information has to be collected, it has to be submitted in a specific template, it has to come to our office, it's vetted by our office, and then it's forwarded to Global Affairs Canada a week before the actual working group. So on a typical working group, these are like 4 or 5 hour meetings, they may have 30 to 40 cases. And so if there's any information missing, or if you've missed that deadline, then the file goes to the following month. But if there's missing information, Working Group B will send it back to the department requesting additional information. That means, again, it will have to wait until the following month because they only set monthly. So the approval process is quite slower than, as I said, with other benefits under the MFSI, because they're not administered within the approval process. I mean, it's not administered within the Canadian Armed Forces. So that's the difference, and that's why there's a significant time delay on certain things to get approvals. So what Foreign Service Directors are administered by SEM? We have FSD 34, that's the main one on educational allowances. There's FSD 35, that's for education travel. And that's for when a child graduates high school outside of Canada and wishes to return to Canada to attend post-secondary school. So we will return the child with one parent back to Canada to help them establish themselves at the location of the post-secondary school, ship some furniture and effects, and then return travel for the parents. So that's what that one's for. FSD 51, that's family reunion travel. So that's to get the children who are in Canada either attending post-secondary education or under a custody agreement with a former spouse back to the member's location, or to get the member to the location of the children. And then we have FSD 30, which is transportation, and that is where a child's attending a school, a private school, or a public school that does not provide transportation. So there's an entitlement to be reimbursed for transportation to get the child to school where there's no busing. So FSD 34, educational allowances. And it's very important to remember the goal of the whole thing is to ensure that a child can receive an education that's compatible with that which is provided without charge in Canada. So compatible. It doesn't have to be exactly mimic the same, compatible. So all the schools on the post ceilings that appear have been deemed compatible and have been approved by Working Group B. So as I said before, non-fee paying schools are to be used wherever possible. So obviously we're only in countries where the public system is in English or French. So fee paying schools are only used when there's no other options. A member may choose any school in the appropriate language on the post ceiling, and we will reimburse up to the cost of the representative school. So we'll pick a representative school. So say the representative school, the tuition at that school will say it's 20,000 euros. But there's other schools on the post ceiling that may be more than 20,000. Then we will only reimburse up to the representative school if a family chooses to choose another school. So it's always capped at the representative school. Language of instruction is in English or French only. Those are our two official languages in Canada, so those are the only two schools that a child may attend or that we will reimburse tuition for. And the entitlement is based on continuity in the language of the current academic instructions. So if your child's attending French school in Canada, they're expected to continue in that stream while they're outside of Canada unless it's not available. The same thing with English. If a child is attending English school in Canada, they're expected to continue in their language while they're attending school outside of Canada. So Roman Catholic education, it's a constitutional right in Canada. Therefore, if it's available outside of Canada, families are entitled to be reimbursed if there is a charge for tuition. The child must have been enrolled in a Canadian Catholic school prior to the posting. Child or parent must be baptized, which is an entitlement in Canada. And again, our post ceilings will have a list of the Catholic schools on the diocese list. Basically, this only applies in the U.S. There are no Catholic schools at any of the other posts outside of Canada. So CBI 12, inside Canada allowances. A lot of families, military families, are not aware that there are entitlements when you're posted within Canada from one province to the next. So under CBI 12, it assists dependent children with transition from one province or territory to another. So what we're looking at there is tutoring. So families are entitled to tutoring for their children for the first year at the new place of duty. And so it's a challenge for us. It's a communication issue to try to get the word out to families, and we've been advocating this with MFRCs and anyone who will listen, basically to advise families that for the first year of the new post in Canada, you're entitled to tutoring if the child's deficiency is accreditable to the change of curriculum. So, example, a child goes from Gagetown to Petawawa, say grade 10. We already know that there is a difference between the New Brunswick and Ontario curriculum, so that child's going to need help, most likely in math and sciences. So what's required is a letter from the principal identifying the deficiency and confirming that it's due to the change of curriculum, and recommending how many hours that they recommend for that each subject. And then the family just goes out and gets 3 quotes from local tutors who are qualified and have a teaching certificate, and we will reimburse the average of the 3 quotes. The other benefit is board and lodging, and non-resident school fees. So that's when a child is entering grade 11 or 12 and the family is posted to another location. That benefit allows the family to leave the child behind with friends or family, and we will reimburse board and lodging and non-resident school fees if applicable, plus 2 return trips for the child to return to the family at the new place of duty. Again, if there's no language of instruction at the new place of duty, the board and lodging is also an option, and that's not the case. At every CLF location in Canada, there are French and English schools, except for Gander, Newfoundland. That's the only place where there are no French schools. So changes to education allowance. So in the past couple of years, we've made changes where in the past there was set rates for different locations within Canada. So there was a Western Canada rate. So if your child was there, that you would be reimbursed a certain amount for that, a Central Canada rate, an Eastern Canada rate. These are things that evolved over time. Bottom line, the policy doesn't go there. So at the end of the day, families are entitled to be reimbursed the lowest economy fare flight that's booked a minimum of 4 weeks prior to travel. And that's an absolute must. I am the only one that can authorize a flight that was booked less than 4 weeks, and it must be outside of the member's control. And in the past, they reimbursed $100 to get the child from the airport to their residence. The policy doesn't say that, so it is actual and reasonable transportation expenses to and from the airport. So if that means a taxi from the Ottawa airport to Arnprior at $120 or whatever the amount would be, that's what is reimbursed. So for secondary students, the entitlement varies on the age of the child. So for secondary students, it's 3 trips per school year. And post-secondary depends on their age. So 2 trips up to 21, and then 1 trip from 22, and everything ceases at the age of 23. And then there's a separate benefit for children who are not in school. So 18 years of age and younger, it's 2 trips. 18 years to 21 years, it's 1 trip with my approval. So there's a scale, basically, of entitlements. So full-day kindergarten, Ontario, by September of 23rd, we still were not approving full-day kindergarten because Ontario had not finalized the rollout of it. But at that time, I inquired, and then they were at 75%. So I had Working Group B authorize full-day kindergarten as of September 2013. So we've been doing it since then. Tutoring in the past, they had specific rates for every post ceilings, and they were outdated. They were 10 and 12 years old in some cases. Just it was too much of a challenge to try to keep them established rates for all of those 500 different locations. So now they're just simply based on 3 quotes. So if you're authorized tutoring, you'll be reimbursed the average of 3 quotes. And as of 1st of September 2015, tutoring is now available on return from OutCan. You would think it would have been always there because it's clear that there'd be different curriculums around the world, whereas we were always authorizing it from one province to the next. So anyway, as of 1 September 15, families are now entitled to tutoring in subjects if there is a deficiency and the principal identifies that it's due to the change of curriculum. Family reunion travel. We're seeing a lot of reconstituted families within the Canadian Armed Forces, so we have a lot of custody agreements, specifically for members that are posted out Canada and their children are back in Canada with their former spouses who have custody of the children. So there needs to be an amendment to the custody agreement to allow the child to travel outside Canada. And 2 trips from the post to the location of the child from the COS date. So it's not based on an annual rate, it's based on the date, the COS date. So that's how you get 2 trips per year from COS date to the following year. So it's not based on school year. There's no entitlement for escort travel unless the child is under 13 years of age or has special needs. So here's an interesting slide for military families. I got this from within Military Family Services here. It just identifies what families and CF members have to go through and how and why they're special and not like anyone else in the Canadian population. So you have 3 factors. You have risk, separation, and mobility. So within risk, you have farmers, a construction worker, an RCMP, police, an aid worker, oil rig worker, first responder. Those are all occupations that have risk. And then you have mobility. So you have occupations that people move. So you have diplomats, you have corporate executives, sales reps, clergy, you have RCMP again, and you have aid workers. Then you have separation. And along those lines, there's some occupations that have some separation. Long-haul truckers, airline pilots, again, first responders, and some oil rig workers. So then, there's very few, though, as you can see, the farmer is by himself in the risk, but there's some occupations that cross over into the other sectors. So RCMP officers has risk and mobility. Then you see a first responder, yeah, he has risk and separation, or an oil rig worker has risk and separation, but no mobility. Whereas in the center here, the red squiggly line, that's the CF member. They have all 3. So they have risk, mobility, and separation. So that's why the Armed Force members and their families are unique. They have all 3. So just to give you an idea about military families, right now we have 100,000 military members in Canada. That includes the Reg and Reserve Force. These are this is data based on the Impera survey, a quality of life survey that was done in July of 2014. And it identifies that we have 63,000 children under 18 who have a parent in the military, either regular force or reserve force. 83% proportion of surveyed military families living in the civilian communities, so they're living in civilian communities. 75% have children. 24% of military families who do not have a family physician. These are just general stats on military families. And 8% of military families report living with 1 or more children with special needs, and that's a growing trend. Where CF families are located, this is another interesting map. It shows you where and what differences in populations by province where military families are located. Ontario has a lion's share, but you can also see that there's been changes and increases in certain locations and decreases in others. But they're serving throughout the country. So impact of mobility on education. So military families move 3 times more than civilian families. Therefore, their children must constantly adapt to new programs and curricula. In 2003, the Ombudsman's report on the home front said, assessing the well-being of Canadian military families in the new millennium reports education as being one of the key concerns for military families on the move. And based on that report and my own observations when I took over this portfolio in 2012, I realized quickly that families were on their own, navigating all these different curriculums and transitions on their own. There was no support other than the allowance piece while they were serving out CAN, or the very few allowances while you're serving in CAN. So I quickly realized that we needed a guidance counseling service. So we did. We introduced the guidance counseling service on the 1st of Jan 2015. And what it does, it contributes to the overall Canadian military family resiliency by supporting the education requirements of their children and offering advice to parents, support when navigating educational transitions, information and educational tools. So what do they do? So they provide the service to all Canadian Armed Forces families serving outside of Canada. So basically, or mostly, we're looking at the secondary curriculum review. They prescribe distance learning courses for courses required for graduation. So as you saw in the previous slides, there are differences in curricula. Basically, every child that's attending high school or will be returning into a high school from a high school outside of Canada will require grade 10 grade 10 geography and grade 10 history. These will be required. So the guidance counselors can prescribe these courses via distance learning to the children so that the courses are done prior to their return. And we actually have the ability in my office here to grant the credit. So we have access to the database that the school boards use, and we can grant the credit right here. So there's no question when the child returns, the credit has been granted. And of course, they will provide post-secondary education guidance services. And for in Canada, they'll provide the same services when families are posted from one province to the next. They'll review curriculum differences with the family and advice on possible tutoring that may be required. And as I said, the New Brunswick to Ontario example, that would be one of them. So most of the counseling is done by telephone and email. Our counselors will liaise with a guidance counselor at the post if required. So if the child's attending, say, an American school in Ramstein, and the child's having difficulty getting advice from the guidance counselor at that high school, our guidance counselors here will reach out to that guidance counselor at the Ramstein U.S. school and help and assist and provide advice as required for the Canadian child. And as I said before, they'll prescribe distance learning, and that is a seamless process. Most of them, we have 5 or 6 providers. Most of the distance learning is done online. And the funding, we are billed, my office is billed directly, so that there's no claims requirement for the families, and the child just logs in, and it's a seamless process. So relevant factors that the guidance counselors use: the age and grade of the students, the length of the posting. As I said, it's important if the child is returning, especially at the secondary level, midstream, or if they're graduating outside of Canada, the past, the current, and the projected school curricula. That's difficult for a lot of families serving outside Canada. They're not quite sure where they're returning to on return from the OutCan posting. So that's difficult. So that's why we normally use Ontario as the Ontario curriculum as the bar, because it is pretty much the highest of all the curriculums in Canada, and a credit assessment. The frequently discussed topics are credit count, distance learning needs, special needs students, the International Baccalaureate program. A lot of families serving OutCan are interested in placing their child in that program at the secondary level. However, it's a very enriched and enhanced program, and not all children are candidates for that. So basically, if a child graduates from an IB secondary school, they basically will waive the first year of university. So that's how enriched the program is, especially in math and sciences. As I said, where the family intends to return to Canada, and college/university applications. They will assist with that. So who requires distance learning? It's not every child. It's determined by the present age and the grade of the child, the graduation date, provincial high school requirements, the length of the posting, and the current educational setting. So partnerships. Being under Military Family Services, the goal of Family Services is to have partnerships with different institutions and organizations that can help advocate on behalf of military families. So on the education piece, the partnerships that I've established of late are one with the Canadian Counseling and Psychotherapy Association. So they've agreed to advocate on behalf of military family children. And so they've helped us to facilitate guidance counseling briefs for local high school guidance counselors at all CF locations. So we've started that. We just did a trial a few weeks ago in Halifax and Greenwood, and it was very well received. So we explain parts of this PowerPoint, but we explain the military family, the military child, how the military child is unique, what benefits we provide to the military family, especially the tutoring piece, so that when they see a military child, they understand that that child can be, the family can be reimbursed for tutoring, so they'll be more eager to prescribe it, knowing that the family will be reimbursed. Another one is the Vanier Institute for the Family. So again, they've agreed to advocate on behalf of military children. They're working on the mental health side to provide school boards with fact sheets on military children. Things to look for specific, anxiety due to separation. You know, dad's been deployed, the child it's got anxiety issues, those types of issues, and just to help them understand some of the mental health challenges military children face. And next year is our 70th anniversary. We were established in 1947 in Europe after the World War II. So they're going to help. We're going to put on some sort of a gala of all our former teachers from our schools, students, that kind of thing here in Ottawa. Some sort of ceremony, and they're working to help us out with that. And the Association of University and College Admissions. We've had problems with families in the United States, whereas they don't have a CFPO box in Belleville, as do most families serving in Europe. So when a child applies to a university, they have to use their home address, which is just basically a U.S. address. So when the universities or colleges receive their application, they were treating them as international students, which means they will go to a wait list, they were charged additional tuition. So we've been working with them, and they're going to create a military identifier for military children who apply to university or college. That way the university will know this is a military child, so they're not international students. So that will assist families, specifically families serving in the U.S. Ottawa Carleton District School Board. So we've got I've signed a memorandum of agreement with them. So they have committed to supply a continuous stream of one principal / senior education officer and one guidance counselor. So how that would work is the principal would go to one of our schools, mostly the one at App North or SHAPE, be the principal of our school there for 2 or 3 years, and then come back in my office here in Ottawa and act as my senior education officer for a further period of 2 years. And the same would be for the guidance counselor. So the guidance counselor at our school at App North in Brunsum, the one that's there now, Maria Lumley, she has just been hired last summer. So she's going to do 2 years at our school at App North, and then come and be a guidance counselor here for the rest of CF families for a further period of 2 years. So that gives her the OutCan experience, the working with the military experience, OutCan, and exposure to the different curriculums working at App North, so exposure to the U.S. curriculum and the UK curriculum. So they're in a much better position to advise CF families when they come into our office to advise the rest of the CF families who are serving OutCan and from one province to the next. They've also agreed to provide IT support for both our schools, because school IT is a lot different than government IT or military IT, and we don't have that kind of support within the Canadian Armed Forces. And again, as I said, the senior advisor to myself. We're working with Tutors.com. It's a U.S.-based company that provides 24/7 tutoring worldwide to U.S. forces currently. So we're looking at creating a partnership with them. That's still a work in process. They're willing to support us. Currently, they only provide English and Spanish tutoring, but they're willing to add French and even hire qualified French military spouses to provide the French tutoring. So that's a great issue, and it's a double-pronged bonus for us. It provides the French tutoring for children, but also a source of income for spouses, because the tutoring can be done 24/7 worldwide, so wherever they're serving. There are contracting issues, however, that's slowing me down on that one, so that one will take quite some time, probably another year to sort out. The Montreal Eastern Township School Board, they have approached us and are willing to provide free English Quebec curriculum distant learning courses to military children serving outside Canada. And that's a great thing. However, the Ministry of Education of Quebec requires that the children reside in Quebec. So I'm working with the Ministry of Education of Quebec with the Eastern Township School Board to have that requirement waived for military children. And so that's an ongoing project as well. So we realized that we were getting a lot of repetitive questions, a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation, which caused a lot of unnecessary email traffic, delays, and confusion. So what we've done is we've created frequently asked questions. They're on our website, and they're by topic, so specific to the family. So they're listed outside Canada, so education at post, education away from post, post-secondary education in Canada. Then the next one will be inside Canada, one province to the next. So the family can see their specific scenario. Okay, my child's being educated at my post. This is mine. You click on that, and it brings you to a set of FAQs for that specific scenario. So here we have outside Canada, education at post. That means the child's being educated at post. So here's a family that's being screened and probably doing their house hunting trip, and these are all real questions. So can multiple school application fees be reimbursed? The answer is yes. Application fees that were paid to more than one school to ensure dependent child acceptance can be reimbursed. And then it gives you the reference. So FSD 34, definitions, admissible expenses. And that is hyperlinked. So you click on it, it will take you directly to the paragraph in FSD 34 that reads the answer. And the next one is the claim form. So it says claim form 9F. That's also hyperlinked. You click on it, it takes you directly to the actual claim form, which is PDF writer, so you can just fill it out on the computer. It also tells you what supporting documentation you require. You print that off, have the military member bring that into the orderly room, and that's how the reimbursement is done. So here's another one. Outside Canada education at post. So I'm posted to Paris, France, and my daughter is currently attending a French language school in Ottawa. Can I enroll her in a private English school or private English language school in Paris? The answer is no. The intent of an education allowance is to allow members who are posted outside Canada with dependent children to obtain compatible schooling that will enable the dependent to continue in the chosen educational stream and will facilitate re-entry into the next higher grade level at a provincial public school system upon return to Canada. Whew, mouthful. The non-fee paying French public school system in France has been deemed compatible. Therefore, your daughter is expected to continue in the chosen French educational stream. Ooh, that's pretty much a cut and paste answer right out of the FSD. So the reference there is F34 definition. So you would click on that, a hyperlink would take you there. You'd see the actual paragraph. There's no claim form on this one because the answer is no. Now, that's the party answer to a scenario like this, but I've had a similar case, same everything, but there was a twist. The daughter, was a son actually, but the son was attending French school in Gatineau, Quebec. They were posted to Paris, but the son was attending a French school with an IB program. That was the difference, and so they wanted to put the child into the American School of Paris, which is an English private school, because they have an IB program. Well, the French public system does not have an IB program. Therefore, to ensure the continuity of the education stream of that child, I approved the switch in language stream to English because of the IB. But normally it's French, French, English, English. In this case, it was an IB that was the difference. So, pretty complicated portfolio. There's a lot of nuances to education allowances. It's a complicated file. We wish that all families and administrators and MFRCs visit our website. Look at our FAQs. It's www.familyforce.ca. It's all in there. We have a lot of information for families, for administrators, for support workers. It's all there. And if you still have any further questions, please contact our staff at our plus box. It's right here on the email here, smg@forces.gc.ca, or give us a call at 613-996-7474. Again, we're on Family Force, Children's Education Management.